BIOL 213 Circulation Lab. This is part 1, where we do the early fish through to the amphibia, and we do a dogfish dissection. We start by thinking about how we acquire a pulmonary system going from a single circulatory system of an ancestral fish, where blood goes from the heart to the gills to the body to the heart. And instead we move to a double circulatory system, perhaps best seen as a first example in the amphibians. Now we lose the gills because they're on land, and instead we're going to have a pulmonary circuit with number 6, which is getting our blood, returning oxygenated blood to the heart, and then we have the circuit going to the head, which is from number 3, and the circuit going to the body, systemic, which is number 4, and we lose 1, 2, and 5. In the birds and mammals, we then lose one of those systemic, so we have one single aorta, and the birds lose the left and retain the right, and the mammals lose the right one and retain the left one. Okay. Concurrent with this story is the change to reduce mixing of pulmonary blood with systemic blood, and that happens by the partitioning of the two atria first to receive blood from the body versus blood from the pulmonary lung circuit, and having a single ventricle. So here's the fish heart, linear, then we go straight to this amphibian one, where we have the separate blood from the body and the lung, and in the ventricle we have a special thing called a conus arteriosus, which diverts blood primarily from the right atrium to the lung and from the left atrium primarily to the body. So that's its special feature. We go through the reptiles and mammals, which we'll deal in a subsequent lab, but they effectively completely partition blood flow so that no systemic venous blood flow or deoxygenated blood flow is going to be mixed with the stuff going out to the body. It's all going to go to the lung, but all the stuff coming from the lung is going to go out to the body. So that's because they've got the 4-chambered heart. Okay, so let's have a look at where we go from here. First off, we have a little teleost, and this was here just as an early example of a fish. The heart in this particular catfish is not so clear, but they would have the sinus venosus receiving blood. That's then passed to the atrium to the ventricle, and then the ventricle through the conus arteriosus and out to the gills. We'll see that better with the dogfish. We have a lamprey illustrating our early heart. Again, it's a similar linear process. One thing to emphasize of these guys is that you can see the early renal system back here with a renal portal, and you also have a hepatic vein for digestion. So those are both there as the early portal systems. Okay, we go to our dogfish. Now we can see an early simple heart, and perhaps if we have a little look at this, here's your key. You can see that we have back here the sinus venosus feeding blood into the atria, which then pass blood into the ventricle and then out of the conus arteriosus. And it works like this, okay? You basically contract the ventricle, and that decreases pressure in the pericardial space, causing your atria, which is a soft bag, to expand, sucking blood out of the sinus venosus and filling it. Then the ventricle actually relaxes, and that therefore causes the blood to be sucked out of the atria and into the ventricle, and also further blood to be sucked through the sinus venosus into the atria. And then, of course, it contracts again and blood is pumped out of that conus arteriosus. So that's kind of how that heart works. It's in combination with the pericardial space and the change in the pressure in there. Okay, so we trundle forward. There's some images of dogfish hearts, which is illustrating those regions. The ventricle, you can see from the back, that sinus venosus to the atrium. That's pretty straightforward. Then we start to look at the arterial system of a dogfish, and I'm going to emphasize a few components. We have here the internal carotids, which is these two here. So that's blood primarily getting to the head, and you see it's branching off of one of these aortic efferent arteries. So the blood's come from the heart, gone through the gill, and then these efferent arteries are meeting, and they're going to pass into the dorsal aorta, which you can see coming down the body. There are it's ventral aorta here. The paired dorsal aorta are these two very little ones just there, and those ones are going forward to the head, but that's not the primary blood flow. Primary blood flow is from A. Okay, if we go down the body, we see a few arteries branching off. The first one is the coelomic. There's that one. Okay, and then secondarily we'd have the gastrosplenic, which goes to the spleen, and the anterior mesenteric. And then finally down here we're going to have the posterior mesenteric going to the renal gland. Okay, so that's the blood flow in the arterial system. You can see some of our components here. We're going to move around, and we're going to go and have a little look at the venous system. So blood needs to return. So we're going to have a caudal vein bringing blood back towards our renal portal, and the renal portal will flow through the kidneys, which are either side of here, and through some renal veins, and then into this posterior cardinal veins, which pass blood back to the head. We also have significant blood flow back through some lateral abdominal, which you can't see here clearly, but normally it's a very clear blue line on the side there. And then we additionally have blood flow going back through the hepatic portal vein, which should be here nice and clearly, but this is not the best or clearest dogfish. So it's going to be a yellow vein typically found just here. So that's probably going to be F just there. Yeah. Okay, so that's how blood gets back to that heart. And we have a lot of sinuses just beneath the heart, like the cardinal sinus and so forth, to receive blood. Okay, you can see those just there. There's all those sinuses with the returning blood flow. Okay, we then finally go over towards our amphibia. You'll recall these now have the pulmonary circuit and the three-chambered heart. So we have a couple of models here. There's a Necturus model, which is a simple conus arteriosus. They still retain the gills, recall, because they have pedomorphosis. So they do show that three-chambered heart. But I think the more interesting jump is over to our bullfrog, which has lost its gills, still has cutaneous skin respiration, but primarily lung respiration. And it has its major heart regions here. So we look over there. We have the ventricle. And then either side, we're going to have the left atrium here, the right atrium here. And the key structure is this pink one down the middle. And that's the conus arteriosus. So if we have a look at this model just here, you'll see there that we have the right atrium here, left atrium here, and then blood flow is going to get pumped out. So you're going to imagine this conus arteriosus here is the same as this, and it has a critical point, a spiral valve in it, which is going to ensure that the blood flow is partitioned between some of it going out into the systemic carotid circuits, and some of it being pushed out to the pulmonary. So you should know that the blood coming into the left atrium is going to get forced into the systemic. It's going to go round and up. And the blood coming in through the right atrium is going to get forced into the pulmonary. And so that's the key point with that heart. So it does have some mixing, but using the spiral valve, they can control the blood flow to ensure that deoxygenated blood from the body goes into the pulmonary circuit and oxygenated blood from the lung goes into the systemic circuits, the aortas. Okay, so that's the end of that one. I'm going to call it the conus arteriosus.